Hi, this is Era, the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast, where I learn about, celebrate, and discuss hot topics with creators from all over the world.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
So hello everyone, welcome to episode 7 of the Tamil Creator. Today I'm going to be chatting with Jananie Baskaran of Palm Roots. And before I let her kind of introduce herself, I will kind of talk about how I know her. And actually, she just reminded me a conversation just before this podcast started that we actually met at the first anniversary of TC's launch party, which was about 10, 11 years ago, which is crazy because I completely forgot about that. And she reminded me. So that was like a trip down memory lane. And ever since then, I've been kind of obviously, I think as most people, keeping an eye on people through social media. So I've been following her work through Palm Roots and the amazing work she's been doing there. So today we're going to kind of delve into her story a bit more, talk about Palm Roots, why she started it, and kind of go from there. So without further ado, Jananie, why don't you tell the folks who are listening a bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Firstly, thank you for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited to be here. One of the questions I hate answering is tell me about yourself. And that's the first question you're asking. So to summarize, I would say I'm a photographer. I'm an artist with a very, very passionate heart in giving back to the community. And I'm a very out of the box photographer. So yeah, I think that just summarizes me in one line.
Okay, I like it, short and sweet. So like I said, I think obviously everyone knows you as a photographer, but you're more than that. And you started, I guess the best way to describe it is a nonprofit, or maybe describe it as another kind of entity, but Palm Roots. And, I think you've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe, or maybe a bit
I
longer.
started in 2013.
Yep. So almost 8 years ago. And obviously this year's been a wacky year, and I'm not sure if you did anything this year, but tell us a bit more about Palm Roots, why you started it, and what kind of impact, you've seen the organization or your efforts, achieve in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. So I started Palm Roots in 2013. And right before that, I was still doing photography, but I was focused more on events. And one thing I noticed is I was one of the first few female photographers in the Tamil community at that time, and we weren't really getting the respect that we deserved as photographers. And once I started seeing that, I also started to realize the pattern of art forms not being respected by the Tamil community. Like it was never something that they would look at as like a career. So I think I kind of got that determination to prove that like an art form can really have an impact in the world and like cause change in the world. And coincidentally, or that same year, I went to Jaffna for the first time. So when I went there, I started taking a lot of pictures without the intention of having Palm Roots anytime. And then once I saw the way I was looking at Jaffna compared to the stories that I've been hearing through like media or like the older generation, I wanted to come back and say my side of the story. And so I did it through photography instead of kind of having like an event where like a TED talk to speak about it. I just thought, why not do an auction? So that's how Palm Roots started, where it said, okay, I'm going to showcase my art form. I'm going to show you my side, the way I see Jaffna, and you get to keep a piece of Jaffna in your homes. And all the funds that we raise through it is going towards supporting education for kids back home who don't have like the privileges that we have here. So yeah, that's how it started.
And like over the years, like what kind of, like, in a dollar amount, how much have you raised? I feel like it's been quite a bit just following your work.
I did a calculation recently because I was doing another write-up. So far, around 60,000.
Wow, that's amazing. And you've had some amazing community partners and like
Huge,
businesses,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Are there any ones specifically that you want to maybe give a shout out to?
Of course, Ideal Groups, which one's a very well-known one. They've been a huge support from 2015 onwards. They kind of came on board and they've been supporting me till my last event in 2019. And also I've been working with Miracle Family Care, which is the church that I raise funds for. So those are the two huge ones that I would say. But it all started off, surprisingly, with Gary Anandasangari, our local MP, who was a lawyer at that time. So he was one of the main sponsors when I first started it.
That's awesome. And like you talked about, like, I know you've been doing it for 8 years. How have you seen Palm Roots evolve? Like, I feel like once you, as a creator, whenever you start something and you put it out there, like I use the example of TC.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we launched 10, 11 years ago, like our website was horrible. We, like we didn't have a lot of like content. We had some good content, but
Right.
like I feel like things evolve once you put it out there. Have you seen the same thing with Palm Roots?
Yeah, because I mean, the first year that I did it, it was like my friends and family that came out to the event, and it was a very small event. Not many people knew about it. They didn't really understand what I was trying to do, so they're just like, okay, like let her just do her thing. We'll see how it goes. But then once it started blowing up, especially after 2015 when it blew up, people were like, okay, she's really making a difference. Like she's actually doing something, and she's showing. I think one of the main reasons it stood out is because I was showing proof of the donations actually reaching back to Jaffna and reaching the schools and showing them constant feedback from the schools. So usually, like, I'm not to put down any fundraisers here, but one thing that people always get concerned about is where their money is really going. So once I started, like, I was very transparent with where the funding was going. So that made me stand out, I guess. And
Hmm.
I think over time, it grew from just being an event to becoming a brand of its own. So yeah, that I would say was that very visible growth that I saw.
Got it. Okay. And like, what are your plans with Palm Roots? Like, I know you started off as kind of an auction. It's like a smaller event, and then obviously it grew in size, but it was still an auction. Storytelling through your photos.
Right.
Do you see it evolving? Like, do you have any other plans for it, or like different forms of exhibiting or telling your story in the future?
It really depends because I mean, this year I couldn't, I mean, 2020 and 2021, I wasn't able to really do like an all out event because of the whole pandemic that's going on. So I think for now, I'm just kind of seeing where things go, but I would like to continue doing an event where I could showcase photos because photography is my main passion. So it's like that love for photography will never go away, but I also want to show people our age another side of Jaffna. So like for the people that aren't able to visit or just choose not to visit, they can get a part of that through my photos. So I do want to continue it, but I don't like making long-term plans because obviously everything's unpredictable now. So I'm just going with the flow for now.
Got it. And like for you, photography was, at least what like through Palm Roots, is photography to tell like a story about where you're from and kind of show a different side of Jaffna that, like even Africa is the same thing. Like
Right.
I was just reading an article today about, I forgot which movie it was with Eddie Murphy, I think it was, where um, it was one of the few movies that was a classic that showed Africa, similar to Wakanda, like
Yeah.
Africa is like a country, or sorry, like a continent that was able to sustain itself. I feel like Jaffna is similar, where you only hear like the negative or sad stories, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of positive stuff happening there too.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because that's actually one of the main things that I'm trying to kind of emphasize on, to show the positive sides and to see, like, yes, there's things that are still happening that are heartbreaking, but at the same time, our community really is taking a step forward to establish their own lives. And like the amount of entrepreneurs you have in Jaffna now is ridiculous. Like the drive and the hustle is so like on another level that it's like whenever I go there and see the way the youth work, whenever I come back, I'm just extra motivated. And that's not the energy that people feel when they think about Jaffna. They think about the other side of the story, but there's also a positive side to it.
Yeah, no, I've been kind of lucky through Tamil culture where we got exposed to like the startup scene in like Jaffna.
Yeah.
Like your all IT hub, I think, is like the big one there, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many like you can kind of see the entrepreneurial energy of Tamil people in Canada, right? Like a lot of
Mhm.
folks that came here, they took on like low paying jobs, but then they slowly kind of got into like entrepreneurial ventures, whether it's restaurants or cleaning businesses, and they're one of like the most successful ethnic groups in at least Toronto, but I'm sure like across Canada as well. So, yeah, I love what you're doing there. With respect to kind of, Palm Roots, obviously, like you said, you haven't had a chance in the last couple of years to do your core event to kind of raise money and awareness. And I know, you mentioned that you started to kind of write and create a blog around maybe like your thoughts, but also, to drive awareness to Palm Roots.
Mhm.
One article in particular, like I absolutely love just because like I read it and like it just really resonated with me personally, was
Right.
one titled, Perks of Being an Outcast. And
Yes.
folks that are listening, I will kind of, add some of the links that we're talking about here into the show notes. But it's a great read. You may or may not resonate with it, but I would love to kind of hear why you wrote it and like, just kind of hear your points because I think I will probably share some of my thoughts around it as well.
Sure. Yeah, and that article, it's funny because that was one of the articles that I wrote very short. Like it was such a like a I just had this random thought where I'm just like, why do I always feel like an outcast? And then I just started writing. Whereas the other articles that I've posted where it's about farming and like all those things that I spend so much time like doing the research on. And
Yes.
then I just randomly decided to do this article because I was just feeling so agitated. But like that's the one that resonated with so many people. Like even till today, like that's, I mean, I only have like I think 4 or 5 articles so far, but that one really stands out to people. And I like that because it kind of came straight from my heart. And it's just that feeling I've always had of like being the outlier and the outcast. Cause it's like, even like me being born and raised, I was born and raised in the Middle East. So it's like, I came to Toronto when I was 13. So even when I came here, it was like, where exactly are you from? Like, do people still live there? And like, what kind of like that? Those are the kind of questions that I would always get. So I'm just like,
Got it.
okay, I'm a human being. I went to school, like, you know, I had a normal childhood. So it's like, it was just being able to adapt to people here. And then everywhere I went, it was that constant change of like so many different cliques of people, but never really fitting into one. But I would always blend into so many, to a point where now it's like any event that I go to in the Tamil community, I at least know 5 people. But it's like they're all acquaintances. They're not like, I just know them from different cliques. But I wouldn't say like I'm part of a certain clique. So it's like I just flow through groups of people instead of being in one clique. So I've always felt like an outcast. So yeah, I just felt like writing about it because I'm like, I don't belong to a certain place, but I always feel like I belong to myself. Like my identity is so strong with how I feel about who I am, but I can't relate that to anyone around me. I don't know if that makes sense, but that was basically the point. It just kind of came straight out of my heart where I just didn't understand why I felt that way. But then I'm just like, you know what? This is who I am and I'm going to celebrate it. So let me put it out there in an article.
Yeah, no, I think I just kind of I had an open end. Um, I think it
Oh
was
my
like
God, are you going to quote me?
I am, yes, I'm gonna read it because it was a
Oh
really well written article and like I said, I read it and I was like, okay, I need to talk to Jananie now.
no.
We've been trained to find ways to shape ourselves into our clique so that we never feel left out. Our generation is most affected by FOMO because we focus so much of who we are based on people around us. Our choices become influenced by choices that our peers to assure we get a sense of belonging with them, which often leads to losing our unique identities over time. And I would say, like I think this experience that you're talking about,
Yeah,
especially during high school, I think during high school is more prone to kind of following kind of others' leads or like
right.
even like trying to be someone I wasn't. And I felt like once I got to university and slowly over university, like I think as you get older, I think generally you become a bit more confident of yourself over time.
Right.
And I think I think similar to you where I would say like 10 years ago I would have like tons of acquaintances. Like I knew like a lot of different people from a lot of different things just because
Yeah,
I did a lot of different things. But I
right.
wouldn't say that, there's one group of people. I mean, maybe there's like a small group of people that I would say that I hang out with regularly,
Right.
but like, I wasn't like good friends with like a lot of people. I think
Yeah.
for me, I was always fascinated by, I love to learn about people. I feel like I ask a lot of questions. So I feel like
Mhm.
that allowed me to kind of fit in like you with different groups of people. But I was never like, I don't know, I
Stuck
guess.
for click.
Yeah, well, I also like I would say that um I was also like opinionated in a way as well, and
Yes.
often those opinions weren't the popular opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, for example, like a lot of how I think is like very out of the box. Like for me, I never was focused on making money, like a lot of money. Like I ran a
Mhm.
business, but it wasn't so I could make millions of dollars. It was more so I want to own my time. That's what
Right.
I cared about because I want to spend it with people and
Yeah.
family. Or like, me and Claudia, we have twins and we live in a condo. That's
Yeah.
not like that. It's not like it makes us unpopular, but it's kind of like a strange decision for most people to kind of understand.
Mhm.
So anyways, I'm just like I really just really enjoyed that piece, so I want to like at least bring it up and talk about it because you had some other good pieces as well, but I guess for me this is the one that I could resonate with, and it makes sense that I think a lot of people resonate with this because whether they admit it or not, I think a lot of people, their sense of belonging has kind of been exposed or kind of highlighted during COVID, where you don't get the normal like physical hanging out. Like
Exactly.
like you really figure out who's with you and who isn't, not in a bad way. It's just kind of,
Yeah, no, yeah.
yeah. So
No, and
anyway,
I think that that particular part that you read came from like just constantly hearing about like the comparison that we have to people. It's like, oh, that person's doing this. Why are you not doing that? That person's like this. Why are you not like that? And it's like, but I am who I am. And it's like, so where's that identity of yourself when you're constantly comparing to people, other people, and kind of using other people as a mirror instead of looking at yourself as a mirror?
for sure.
So yeah, it's like that whole comparison thing that exists in our community for like decades.
And like, have you heard the framework of like the five whys?
No, I haven't.
So basically, it's like, you know what, kids, you know, if you tell a kid something, they keep asking why.
Yeah.
And like it's like the similar thing where like if like you know you just what you just talked about, if I ask like you know I talk to Claudia, like we talk about things,
Mhm.
and then as we're talking, if I ask the five whys,
Yeah.
eventually you get to the real truth of why somebody said something. So like
Right.
you might
Yeah.
think you said this because of this, but the underlying core reason fundamentally for a lot of things that I hear about people talking about is that
Mhm.
they care about what other people think.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
that's like the core thing. So anyways, this is like, so yeah, I mean, I'm gonna share this article after this podcast. I feel like people could benefit from reading it. So
Okay, I'm glad. I hope
uh
I write more pieces like that then.
yeah, no, I think that's the thing about creating content though, right? I think um there might be things that resonate with you, but then you never know what will resonate with people, right? Like what
Yeah,
people really enjoy. So
right.
keep producing content.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, another I think topic I want to highlight was you talked about it earlier, which was you're female and you're one of the first photographers in the community. I think Vipu was
Yeah.
the other one I can think of
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, you mentioned that you weren't like, I think photography and like anything creative wasn't taken seriously like 10 years ago, and I think it's slowly changing. But as someone that you know you're directly in that space, have you seen it change? And if so, like I guess from an opinion of like either your peer groups or from like you know family, like older family members,
Yeah.
have you seen their opinion of you being a photographer change?
So one thing I have to highlight though is because of the pandemic, I saw the dark side of it where I felt really, so I don't actually, I'm not a photographer full time. That's a
Yes,
side thing that I do.
got it.
But I know so many artists who do this full time who actually were affected by the pandemic big time. And it it annoyed me so much because it became like a I told you so moment for so many people where they were like, oh, look, now you don't have a stable income. This is why we were telling you that you need to have a full time. Like that whole negative talk was much more louder during the pandemic. And that just annoyed me so much more because it takes a lot of strength for an artist to actually pursue their art form full time, especially during times like this. But instead of celebrating their consistency and their persistence, we're kind of like using this as a moment to point fingers. But in my personal journey, I think the way people treated me when I was an event photographer for like the first 2-3 years compared to the way it was once Palm Root started changed so much, just because people saw that I was doing something that was related to giving back, and that whole philanthropy humanitarian side came in the picture. So the respect level went up. And I think which was my point, which was the point that I was trying to prove. So in that way it did change. But I still get that whole talk of like, oh, you're still doing photography, you're still doing that on the side. And it's like, I still have that, but it's just, I've just become so like, it's like mute now. Like, it's like, I just don't hear it anymore, but it still exists. But I think people are just visibly seeing the amount of support, especially like during the pandemic, the amount of funding that the government provided. People were like, wow, they're giving so much funds for like artists. So they are a big deal. And I'm like, really? It took this for you to realize the impact of artists? Like, if it wasn't for art, we wouldn't, like, we would be zombies. Like, that's how I see it. So I feel like people still see art form as something that you should do on the side and not like your full-time job. But I don't know, I feel like it's still the same. Like, it hasn't changed much, but I personally haven't been affected by it because it's always been like a side thing for me. So
Got it.
yeah.
I would say about your comment around like people saying "I told you so."
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that so much, even when like TC started. Like, why are you guys doing this? What's the point? The Tamil community is so small. I think it's like I don't want to generalize, but I feel like a lot of people put down others versus supporting them when they also feel something they don't feel great about themselves. So I feel like they don't want others to experience something different that they don't understand. And with respect to kind of the creative arts, I completely agree with you. I'm not creative. I guess I'm creative by doing this podcast, but like I admire people that are creative. I read this quote or something that somebody wrote, like, when you wake up, you listen to music, maybe like when you're getting ready for the day, or
Yeah,
like you're watching TV or like a movie when you're unwinding after work. There's like all these examples of art that are throughout, creative arts throughout your day. And
yeah,
then, like you said, if people didn't have that, like you would be pretty much, I don't know, like not robots, but like there wouldn't be a lot of joy. Like music brings
yeah.
joy to people, movies brings joy, or like it exposes people to viewpoints they don't get to hear about. So I'm like a big believer in the creative arts. And I think as technology replaces, um, or like, replaces a lot of these jobs of old, I feel like art will become more important.
Mhm.
So I just I think it's only going to get more important. Like this is like, I think the golden age to be a
Yeah.
creator. So
Well, let's just hope it takes a positive turn after the pandemic kind of eases down.
I think so. I think I think a lot of people in the art space I found like a lot of examples online where they've been able to kind of quickly pivot.
Yeah.
So like do outdoor exhibits or like do digital exhibits, and obviously like have you heard of NFTs?
No, I haven't.
They're like it's kind of like a bit of blockchain and kind of unique identification. It's like basically like unique ownership of like digital like art or like assets, and art is like one of the first ones.
Okay.
So I feel like there's been a lot of artists that have been making like crazy. I think art has been put to the forefront because of kind of COVID and like blockchain and like
Yeah.
cryptocurrency. There's like literally artists making tens of millions of dollars with art, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
and
So
like street art is becoming such a huge thing, which is one thing I love because
yes,
I always felt like even like 10 years ago, downtown just felt like a bunch of buildings. And like every time I would go to work, I would be like, oh, I need some kind of color in here. And like now everywhere I go, it's like the buildings have like artwork on the sides and like all like it's just so nice to see so much more artwork and color everywhere.
nope, for sure, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So obviously we've been focusing a lot on like what you do on the side. So what do you do as a day job, and like how does it align with your after hours interest, if there is any at all?
Um, it doesn't align at all. It gives me that balance because it's complete opposite. So my day job, I'm actually an assistant to pathologist at Toronto General Hospital, which is very like task oriented and like a very managerial, like very complete opposite from who I am as like my personality. But
Yes,
what it does is it makes me kind of focus on keeping myself grounded. So whenever I'm outside of work, like my creative energy just goes on full blast. And
got
like
it.
I'm involved in so many different creative projects and I'm able to give my like full 100% to those projects because my day job kind of keeps me grounded. And it's taught me a lot about leadership and like managing 5 pathologists is it gets crazy, and even being in that hospital environment even during now like the during COVID it's been a lot, but that has also helped me refocus all my creative energy on projects. And like I planned palm roots while I was at work, so it's like I hope my doesn't hear this, but like most of the planning was done during work because they give me that freedom to like do my work but at the same time work on my own stuff. And then when I'm outside work I'm on like full art mode.
So like would you say that after like in a given week, in a typical week,
Yeah,
after you're done your like day job or day work,
yeah.
you're like pretty much working on your art? Like do you I guess, is this your way of unwinding, or do you have other things that you do besides your art to kind of unwind?
I do a lot of reading, but yes, art form is does take a majority of my time after work, just because I like it's like my happy space at the end of the day.
Okay. Speaking of books, that's a great segue to my next question.
Okay.
Like I read a lot as well, and like for me, I just ask because I want to add it to my list. I'm sure people are interested or are interested as well. But
Mhm.
what is either like a favorite book or a podcast that you listened to recently that's had like a significant impact on you?
One, I think anyone who's friends with me in like the last like 8 9 years knows I've said this book name so many times, but The Monk Who Sold a Ferrari by Robin Sharma. That book is literally one of those change my life moments. I actually read it when I was in university, and like it just changed the way it changed my outlook on a lot of things, especially like the spirituality aspect came into place. But it's highly, highly recommended. Like it's such a good book. And the other one, which I think you might like, it's called Flashes of Thought. It's by the ruler of Dubai. He has such a long name, but I'll say Sheikh Mohammed. You can probably Google it to find the rest of his name. It's like Al Maktoum or something like that. But it's such a good, it's one of those quick reads. It's a very short book, but he's obviously known for like creating Dubai for what it is today. And he talks about a lot, like he's a very controversial leader. Like he has a lot of bad reputation, but at the same time, as a leader, he's on top of his game. Like that book is a very short read, but each chapter talks about aspects that are really crucial to leadership. But he also adds aspects of like spirituality, family, creative, like the creative energy, and like how to kind of like strategic thinking, basically. So that's a book I would highly recommend too. So those two books are always my go-to. Like I always keep going back to them.
Okay.
So yeah, those are two that I would say.
And I guess related to that, what's like a new belief or behavior, or I guess habit that you have adopted over the last little while that's really improved your life?
It does relate to the book too, but reflection.
Okay.
Can't even say that right. But yeah, it's just about like whenever it's a thought that really helped me kind of go through that whole thing that our community has of like, what will other people think? It's like that does not even run through my mind anymore. It's because of that aspect of self-reflection where if something triggers me about someone else, or if a comment someone says bothers me, I kind of look back and I'm like, okay, what is it about that aspect that's making me feel uncomfortable? So instead of lashing out on the person or telling that person to stop, I take that comment and I'm like, and I think to myself and I think, okay, like, why is that triggering me? What part of me is kind of feeling agitated over that comment? And once you start doing that as a practice, you get to a point where nothing can faze you. And you just get to a point where it's like no one's comment or no one's behavior can affect you. Not that I'm a pro at it, I'm still practicing, but you just become very like, it's kind of like meditation where you go within to focus on certain aspects instead of looking outside for like that validation all the time. You kind of take it in and be like, okay, so what do I need to work on? What can I improve about myself? So it's always constantly asking myself what I can improve instead of like spending my time finding faults in other people or gossiping or talking about what other people are doing.
No, that's like it's a great habit. Like for me, I think that's like another thing I think I've really adopted over like the last 4 or 5 years, or actually even longer.
Mhm.
Sometimes I feel like there's with every good or anything that's perceived good, there's always a negative. I feel like when I pretty much say I don't like I'm not affected by what people say about me, it could be
Mhm.
taken the wrong way as in like, oh, you don't care to kind of, you don't care about
I
people.
was gonna say that, but okay, you can finish and then I'll
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's what I think people sometimes would be like, oh, this person may not care, but it's
Yeah.
not that. It's like I do care about people, and I go out of my way to do things to show that. But I guess when I do things, I just don't like. I mean, there's certain people I do care about their opinion, but I just otherwise I'm not over paralyzed or not paralyzed by every single person's thought of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were gonna
And
say
I think
something.
for like us, like one thing I could say about me is like, especially when it comes to my parents, like when they say something, it just affects me so much more than anyone else. And I'll sit there and be like, why did they say that? What is that supposed to mean? And like, I'll overthink to a point where I realize that might have been something that bothered them, but it's nothing personal to do with me. So it's like, once I started taking that of like, don't take everything personally, it kind of made the grabbing aspect a lot better.
Hmm, makes
But I
sense.
still respect their opinion. I just know when to take it or just to kind of be like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but let it be there.
And I noticed some people like they do care about you and they give you advice, but they might not be the best. They might not know how to best word things, so
Yes.
it just might come off.
Speaking of which,
Especially,
that's actually my next blog post.
see,
Let's see how much you resonate well on.
yes, I look forward to reading it.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself like in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh man, that's another question that I just never know how to answer. Honestly, I really don't know. Like there are things that have happened in my life so far, things that I've never dreamt of happening. Like it's been crazy. So I like it. I like it that way. So I don't like to plan too ahead.
Hmm.
But I know what I need to do in terms of like what makes me the happiest. So, and that's always been my focus. But in terms of like career goals or like all that stuff, I just go with the flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll probably hate this question even further more, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. What about your personal legacy? Like for me, I like this question because there's a book called, I'm sure a lot of people have read it. It's called Tuesday Mornings with Murray.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I
So
love that
like, like I think he set up like, for those of you who haven't read it,
one.
essentially he fakes his own death. And he sets up like a funeral just to kind of see what his friends and family say about him. And so like I like to, when I'm living my life, I want to, try to like I try to behave in a way that I want to be remembered for.
Yeah.
So like what is that for you? Like in a few sentences, like how do you want to describe yourself? Like your personal legacy.
I think so. Someone in another interview asked me if I was to write a book, what would it be called?
Yes.
And I think it both relates to the same thing. The answer that I gave to that was living life on her own terms.
Got it.
And that's something that's like for me, I want to be remembered as someone that really followed her heart and like really followed what she wanted to do and lived life on her own terms. So yeah, I think that's something that like no matter how many, and also like I think the importance of kindness, that's something that I've tried so hard to emphasize on. And usually kindness is seen as something that's very like weak and soft, and it's like, oh, you're so kind all the time, like that's the kind of tone you get. But kindness is such a strong quality to have, and it takes true strength to be kind. So I think those are the things that I want to be remembered for.
And I think when you say kind, I think there's a difference between being kind and a pushover. You can be kind without being a pushover.
Yes.
So I definitely resonate. I get that sometimes too. Um, okay, so
What's your personal legacy?
my legacy, I think the way I think it is, I think of it as like the different personas that I want to have. Like in
Okay.
terms of like for me, when somebody looks at like, at my funeral, whatever it is, I
Yeah.
want to be remembered as a great like husband, a great father, a great like son, brother, friend. Like
Yeah.
basically like I'm very relationship oriented. So
Mhm.
even like this podcast, it's really I want to build relationships. I want
Yeah.
to build an audience, like the people that I can talk to about things.
Mhm.
So I think it's like I'm very relationship oriented. So just
Okay.
I want to be remembered for those different things.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, that's a long answer to your
Really
question.
cool. Yeah.
So in terms of like being Tamil, being a big, so for me, it's a big part of my identity and how I view myself, and hence, why I started or co-founded TamilCulture.com. What has been like? Do you feel the same way as like Tamil being a big part of your identity? And if so, also like, what has been the impact of the Toronto Tamil community on you personally, and like, I would say business-wise, or like, obviously with your non-work initiatives.
Yeah. I can't see myself as anywhere else other than being Tamil. Like it's like the identity is so strong that I relate to it so much. So I like even since I was little, it's like the Tamil culture has always been a part of my life in terms of like dance, art forms, the language. Like I can read, write, and speak. So it's like that's such a huge for me. That's something that I'm very proud of, and yeah, the culture and identity is such a huge part of who I am. Like if you were to take that part away from me, like that would be like 90% of who I am. So I definitely do have like Tamil, being Tamil is a very strong part of my identity. In terms of the Tamil community, yeah, I think I've always been kind of involved in it in terms of not even if you take out Palm Roots, like I was part of Cantide as a youth outreach worker. I was a volunteer for Cantide, and also I'm also part of many other organizations that are within the Tamil community, because I think just growing up like at home, that was always something that was emphasized, and even giving back to the community was always emphasized. So uh, because that passion came through, like I think the Tamil community here has supported me so much with every initiative that I take. But at the same time, there has been the negative side as well, because at the end of the day, they see me as like, oh, she's a girl that's doing her own thing, and it's like, where is she really going with all of this? Like I get those type of questions as well, but the support has like just over like that just emphasized. I don't know, like I think I don't see Palm Roots being what it is today if it wasn't for the support of the community.
Yep. No, I agreed. I feel like there's like the pro and con of like they say in the Tamil community instead of 6 degrees of separation, there's like two, which is true.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons to that, right? Like I mean, everyone talks about everyone maybe, or but
Oh
like
yeah.
I feel like the community really rallies around like entrepreneurs or businesses or people. So yeah, there's pros and cons of I think everything.
Yeah, and I think like one of the examples, like even coming back to like Ideal supporting me from like Palm Roots, when they supported me in 2015, they like barely knew who I was, but something made them trust me and say, okay, let's just see where this goes. And like they completely supported the event. And when the community saw that a group like Ideal was supporting my event, it just kind of made people recognize me more and be like, okay, she must be doing something right if a company like Ideal is trying to support her. So again, it comes back to that whole like foundation that I have with the Tamil community here.
Yep. And I think like building a reputation takes a long time.
Yeah.
I think
Destroys in a second.
it can be destroyed in a second. So yeah, it's like it sucks.
Oh yeah.
uh, um, and then I guess who is one person from the global Tamil community that you admire, and who's one person that isn't Tamil that you admire, and like why?
Oh man. There's so many people. Okay, I can't really specify one person from the global Tamil community, but I think throughout my work, like one thing I always look back to is like every Tamil parent, I think, who left back home during the war and moved to another place and started life from scratch and kind of have kids now that are successful in their own ways in another country is considered like someone that I admire because like look at the amount of things like our parents went through. Like my parents weren't really in that war zone, but like there are so many parents that kind of overcame that and then moved to a place like here or anywhere across the world, and like to be able to start from scratch and build that, you know, stability for their family, and now like even like survive a pandemic. Like who would have thought they would go through all these things and yet survive? Like that's such a huge, like it takes so much strength to go through all of that. So I think I just admire like anyone who's been through that journey. So I can't really point out one person. But outside of the community, like there's just one person that I've always looked up to, and since I was little, like I don't know if you're gonna find this funny, was it's Princess Diana.
Okay.
Always admired her so much. Like I was that little girl that had like a scrapbook of pictures of her, and like I loved the work she would do with like nonprofits, and maybe that's a part of me that always knew that I would get into that field as well. But I've always admired her for like how gracefully she handled everything she was going through. I don't know if you watched The Crown, but you can see what she went through in the show now. But like just to be able to go through all of that and yet keep her poise and like do what she does, and like 25 years since she like passed away, people still remember her for her kindness. Like that's something I always admire. So it would be her. She's like my number one.
Well, you said your personal legacy was to live life on your own terms, and she definitely did that. So I can
Yeah,
see.
it all relates back to my scrapbook from when I was like 5 years old.
And then I think your comment about like, you know, anybody that, you know, in this case, like from the Tamil community, specifically in Sri Lanka, that escaped the war to go somewhere else and like create a life. I think like, I don't think like, if you don't really think about it, you don't realize how hard that is. Like
Yeah.
if you go to a trip and you go to another country, like, you know, when we went somewhere for hours, we didn't know the language. So,
Mhm.
you know, we had to rely on like a translator or like, you know, like technology to kind of figure our way around. But that's just to kind of enjoy ourselves and take a trip like a vacation.
Yeah.
Our parents literally had to figure out if they didn't know English. I mean, I know there's luckily some English background in kind of our history in Sri Lanka, but you know, for those that didn't understand, English wasn't their first language, especially women that weren't given that opportunity in Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
to learn English, completely new language, and then, you know, start off in jobs like, you know, they might have been like have more, if you want to call it prestigious jobs back in Sri Lanka, and then have to humble themselves to like do less, you know, respectable jobs, at least in their community's perspective, to like food put on their plate, and then, you know, kind of put their children or like the next generation above their own. That's like a lot of things to ask from like one person or two
100%,
people.
exactly.
So definitely agree with that. And you know, you know, we're on the subject of kind of being Tamil and a creator. You know,
Mhm.
what's a piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring or fellow Tamil creator?
I think the number one thing is stop listening to other people. Like it's, oh my God, it consumes so much of our brain. Like we're constantly thinking of what other people will think about what we do. But at the end of the day, everyone's trying to figure out themselves. So like it's like we're all confused in our own ways, so to rely so much on someone else's opinion of what you should be doing or who you are and like what you should, where should you should be going with your life is like, it's like that's like betraying yourself. So it's like that's one thing I would say. It doesn't matter if it's an artist or just like human beings in general should stop listening to other people's opinions and really just follow what feels right to them, because I think it's just so important. Even as an artist, one of the main things you need to do is really take out all that negative noise and like even transfer, like sometimes you can transform negative energy into positive when it comes to art, but like you need to do that from a space where you really love what you do and like really understand yourself. So to understand yourself, you need to stop listening to everything around. So that's one thing that I would say to do as a Tamil creator, and always just never give up on your art forms. Like that's something that will always keep you happy. And again, relating back to my blog, like one of the posts that I did was about like what's your childhood interest, and that's the little part of you that will always keep you happy, and that always has to do with an art form. And like even if it's coloring, like some part of you is still there that like if you take that up now, it will make you happier. So it's like never lose that art form or never lose that skill that you have within you. And even if you feel like you're not an artist or you're not creative, you can enjoy other people's art form. You can celebrate other artists. So it's like just keep that positive energy going within artists. So yeah.
Great advice. Okay, perfect. Well, we're gonna now move from the serious part of the discussion into more of the fun part.
Okay.
Um, it's what I call would you rather. So basically, I'm gonna ask you to choose between two different things, and you just tell me why. All right.
Okay.
So we'll start off with an easy one, okay?
Okay.
Mutton rolls or kotroti?
Oh man, that's so hard. um, okay, I would say kotroti.
Okay, and why do you like kotroti? And
I was
where
gonna be like, are you really gonna ask me an answer for
yes,
why I choose one over the other?
yes, and like what's your go-to spot?
If any restaurant, like if any Tamil like takeout places are listening to this, the reason I'm choosing kotroti over mutton rolls is because mutton rolls doesn't always have mutton in it.
Y-
So if you put more mutton in your rolls, we'll choose that over the kotroti.
It's so funny. You're like the third person that even if they've chosen mutton rolls, they have
Yeah,
that complaint.
really? See, well,
Yeah.
let's put out a petition now.
Like for me, this question is like more of kind of a informal poll. So like, I love both of these things. So I'm like,
Yeah, I
we're
know.
gonna
No, it's really hard to pick though.
okay, got it. Okay, this question is more so I've made some observations about like your Instagram account. So this is why I asked. So would you rather be the photographer or the model?
Oh man, photographer all day. I hate being in front of the camera.
Are
As
you sure? I've seen more of you
confident as
modeling.
I look and how many pictures I post on Instagram, like I'm telling you, the reason I post that is because I love when other girls follow me and say that they love the saris that I wear and then ask me about the fashion aspect of it. That's the only reason I post pictures of myself. Other than that, I would love being behind the camera any day.
Okay. I thought it'd be more of a trick question, but I guess
Nope.
not. Okay, so if you had to choose to live in either a condo or a house, what would you choose
Condo.
and
I'm
why?
such a condo person. I don't know why. I have this like fascination over like hotels and condos for some reason. Like even when I'm not traveling, I still love looking like some of the Instagram accounts I follow are just like boutique hotels that I'll probably never go to, but I just love looking at hotels. So condos.
And so do you plan to live in a condo or do you currently live in a condo?
No, I actually live in a house, but yeah, financial aspects I don't even want to think about right now. If we take that out of the picture, I would say condo.
Condo, okay. Um, and I say this, okay, so it's Toyota or Tesla, but you can substitute Toyota for like Honda or whatever, but basically Toyota, Honda, etc., or Tesla. What would you choose?
Oh my god, I'm so not a car person. I like Teslas. I like their look, but so maybe I would choose a Tesla.
Got it. Yeah, this question is
Also
more,
very good for the environment.
I typically ask this question as I'm thinking it's more of like practicality versus like, Tesla looks nice. It's like environmentally
Yeah, as you can
friendly.
tell, I'm all about like the looks of a car. So yeah, I would say a Tesla.
Makes sense, I think. And I guess the last question, I was trying to figure out your favorite city. I thought it was London, but okay. Would you rather choose Toronto or London to live in, or yeah, to live in?
That's so hard. Toronto feels like home, but I think in terms of again my fascination for Princess Diana and like fashion wise and all that stuff, like I really like London, but I would still choose Toronto just because our roads are much bigger and I feel so claustrophobic every time I go to London.
Got
So
it.
I don't know. That's a hard choice.
Okay. Well, you did pretty well.
Okay, well,
Um,
I passed.
the key question for me was really the mutton rolls and koth roti, but I got the answer I was looking for.
Okay, good.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean
You got the complaint that you were looking for.
I want to know where you got your koth roti. I'm just trying to build a list of like
Oh
where,
man.
like what are the spots that people are telling me to go to. So I've heard Gaza quite a bit for koth roti. Like I really like Gaza. So
So for me, it's like any new restaurant that comes up, the first thing that I try is a koth roti. So it's really hard because I like to do my research everywhere. But yeah, Gaza does stand out. Um, I don't know, like I've tried them like in any place that you tell me, I've probably tried their koth roti.
mutton rolls, I found the best ones to be at Quality Bakery.
Oh
Personally,
yeah,
personally, I really
yeah,
like
'cause
their
they
stuff.
actually have a lot of mutton.
Yeah,
The koth
exactly.
roti, can I be honest? Koth roti, the best koth roti is homemade.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
We make our own, so I can't really, yeah, I don't know, I would say homemade.
got it. Well, like I said, I'm just building up my database.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you can add my home as a list as part of your list, but
Well, if we ever do another podcast, and maybe if it's in person, I will demand your homemade koth roti.
we've got a deal.
Awesome. That concludes kind of our conversation. Thank you again for kind of, making time to kind of sit down and chat and share your story. And I'll share, like I said, like your that article that really resonated with me. Before we kind of let you go, are there, if somebody wants to reach out and connect with you, how do they find you? And like, is there anything else you want to let people know that you're up to, that maybe you're looking for collaboration or just, support?
So to find me, yeah, social media like Instagram, like you mentioned, would be one of the main platforms. And yeah, I'm pretty good with that. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook, just the usual. And also my website, which is palmrootsonline.com. There is a contact form if anyone wants to reach me, but I also have a main website for my photography and work that I've done so far for Palm Roots, which is team3d.ca. That has all my work in it. And yeah, like in terms of upcoming work, like right now, like I'm just really enjoying this being a writer. So I'm just focusing on that. But yeah, I would love to do like collaborations, or even like if there are any small businesses or upcoming businesses that need the promotion, I would love to do like sponsored posts or something like that on my blog. So yeah, anyone can reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Janani. And before we kind of let things go, for anyone listening, please give this podcast 5 out of 5. It really helps increase our visibility on whatever platform you're listening to. So whether that's Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, please comment, share, like our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, whatever floats your boat. And if you have any feedback or ideas on future guests or even specific topics, reach out to me, Era, and the email address is hello@thetamilcreator.com. Thank you again, guys, for listening, and chat soon.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.